We've got a big news around energy for you because the continent's leading energy advocacy group, headquartered in South Africa, the African Energy Chamber, has asked the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, to lean on the World Bank to remove global investment ban on fossil fuel explorations. And that was contained in a statement made last week in Vienna by Ayuk, the head of the African Energy Chamber, at the 9th OPEC International Conference. In the meantime, Ayuk says a number of Russia's energy companies, such as Gazprom, are ready to invest in projects across Africa's hydrocarbon industry, based on his discussions at the Russia's Energy Summit held in St. Petersburg last month. Now, joining me to discuss this and more is Ayuk himself, the executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber. Great Tuesday evening to you there in Johannesburg, my friend. It's good to see you.
It's an honor to be with you again, boss, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Let's start with President Trump's package of sanctions and tariffs aimed at Russia. What is the outlook on this from the global oil and gas industry's perspective?
These sanctions from the United States against Russia, it's going to really open the markets because it is going to see how it might really hurt. We need to pay close attention to that, but the devil is in the details, because remember when he did the tariffs in the past, Russia was actually exempted. There was zero tariffs on Russia, but also you're looking at now sanctions might come on LNG and crude oil exports. That could really open the market. And what happens with that? You might see prices of oil actually spike. So we need to be very, very careful. And also you need to pay attention to the Russian response towards that. And I think we are very concerned about it because it might create more volatility in the markets. And as much as anybody wants to see a less volatile oil market, because it's bad for consumers, it's bad for producers, and it's bad for Africa, since we are seeing a lot of underinvestment in the industry.
So, United States and Russia are giants when it comes to global energy industry. These are two elephants looking at this. President Trump is talking about 100% tariff. That comes out way out of this planet, by the way. Why should it matter to Africa, in particular for Russia? Why should Russia matter to Africa when it comes to the global energy industry?
I think the Russians have played a big role in being drivers of natural gas to the world. But let's not forget, Russia is actually not supplying a lot of natural gas to the United States. Less than 5% of Russian gas or Russian exports are going into the United States. So it's not really going to hurt them more. You need to look at where Russian gas goes. It goes into China, it goes into India, it goes into other markets that are using gas as a high demand. When it comes to Africa, we have seen some purchases of gas, be it in Egypt or South Africa, from Russia, but most other African countries that really need gas, they've been unable to afford it because, it's not free. You got to pay for something. But what it could really hurt is going to hurt around exports, around fertilizer that we need so much to drive up Africa's agricultural basis, and also wheat that comes into that. But you have to look at the markets. You have to look at the routes. As long as the Black Sea and others are not closed, there's going to be ways to walk around that. What we hope for is that we find a way to get some kind of stability on this. Now, are you going to see Russian investments in Africa, especially on gas monetization programs? Yes, because they are moving very strong to realize that their knowledge in gas can really benefit the continent. But I don't expect big, massive investments on natural gas development. We've seen Rosneft investing in the Mozambique LNG. We've seen Luke Oil doing very well to get out ENI on Tango LNG in Congo. And you've seen the movements happening in Ghana. So you're still going to see a lot of investment coming out of Russia into key strategic but bankable projects in the continent.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a bit. But are you just stepping into my next point about the takeaways from the St. Petersburg Energy Summit? This is not the first time of you attending the summit and you meeting with some of the biggest Russian energy firms, such as Gazprom. Again, looking at what Africa really brings to the table in terms of gas, do you think there's something from that summit that you want to share with us. How interested is Russia in doing business with Africa, and what difference would that make to the United States already doing business in Africa in the hydrocarbon industry?
I think it makes Africa competitive. I think Africa is a fine bride. We need to put ourselves in a position where Russians, Chinese, Americans are competing for us. We are not a continent that should be focused on one country only. That would be dangerous for Africa. We've seen that in the past when we were wedded to one continent like Europe and we ended up bad. So Russians would have to compete for Africa. And I think being in St. Petersburg with various African heads of state, I was with the deputy president of South Africa at the same time visiting and talking to Russian businesses, we realized one thing: everybody needs to compete for our resources to ensure that we get the best deals, and that's what is expected. It's free markets. But what we see is that, look at the agricultural basin and around fertilizer. 20 years ago, Russia was a net importer of food. 20 years later, they are a net exporter because they were able to use gas, transform it into fertilizer and power agricultural bases, and now they're supplying wheat. So imagine a countries at war like Russia and Ukraine are still supplying wheat to Africa. We could learn from some of those technologies and turn our stuff around. But their export invested into Afrexim Bank, and they've invested into various African companies that are actually delivering and changing things. That doesn't stop us from doing business with our Middle Eastern counterparts, or best of intra-Africa trade, energy trade, for us to trade among ourselves, because we got to put skin in the game and drive it up and then welcome others to join us.
Very interesting. So we've got to deal with Russia on one hand, United States on the other hand. So if you give me a sense of what the discussions were in Petersburg about doing business in Africa, how do you think Russia want to play? Will it be any different from how United States and others, the Italian energy giants, is it France, anyone else doing business in Africa so far, the British?
I think every continent will always make its own pitch and tell you they are the best bride or the best groom. I think the devil is always in the details. But one big caveat for Russians trying to look at the African energy industry, especially like midstream or midstream or some kind of gas monetization project, because Russia is big on gas. But what do you think would happen? The cost of borrowing for Russia right now is very, very high. So they start looking at their services, where can they bring in key unique services into the continent to power up some of our African independent or national oil companies to show up so that they can use their technique know-how to do that. That is all fine, but the devil is in the details. So I'm an African. I would rather prefer strong African companies powering and developing African energy sector while collaborating with parties internationally. But it's important that we have an Africa First strategy. Then we welcome others to join us.
We welcome everyone to join us. And one of these you're inviting to join us was the OPEC Conference last week in Vienna. Expand for me those three financial priorities that you placed on the table for OPEC and others, and why are these three priorities very urgent for Africa? Walk me through those 3 points. NJ.
Burson, I didn't just want to go OPEC just to participate and just to be there for the season. I wanted to be there for a reason. And one of the key things is that we have critical issues right now in Africa. The underinvestment in oil and natural gas is hurting Africans every day. We are not getting the right kind of funding that we do, because most DFCs, be it in Western countries or World Bank, they're not touching even field development projects when it comes to gas or even oil. They have frozen Africa out. Europe said natural gas is green. They changed that taxonomy, and then they could fund gas because it's green energy. I believe gas is green energy for Africa as well, and we should be able to unleash finances into that so we can drive Africa's potential and really do projects from capturing gas that is being flared to do power projects or fertilizer or LPG or CNG projects. And it paves our continent towards going to a just energy transition. But also we need to be able to be fair. We need to fund oil and gas projects. It's no longer the time to sit in these meetings and then just have a great discussions and then go back hand alone. And I'm more proud of the African delegations, be it Owando, who was there, NNPC, the Nigerian minister Heineken. Oh, this guy is an OG. He really make case for investing in Nigeria. I love Heineken. He was right on point. Bruno Eto'o, Senegal, that might be joining this big OPEC family very soon, going in there, having a strong African voice. And I felt that it was very, very important for us getting our voices harnessed. And it was also very important to have Africa private sector like Owando really driving that message that Africa is ready for investment, but we have to come in there with financing, because that is what is holding us back. And that is what is preventing us from really unleashing a true African potential and African dominance that would need energy, because we need a transition. We accept a transition. We're not against climate change, but it's called global warming, not Africa warming, because some guy in Europe, they use the elevators to get up to the 50th floor, then look back at Africans and said, well, you Africans take the stairs. That's unfair. We can't accept that. And we should not be apologizing for wanting to use oil to power Africa. So our message was very clear to OPEC and to African countries that were present. Produce every drop of oil you can find to better the life of our people. We are not backing down from our drill, baby, drill message. We think we're going to take it to the next level.
You also talk about special funds and all of that. How do you expect that to happen? You talk about this dedicated fund. What do you have in mind? Is that different from the Africa Energy Bank, which is about $5 billion initial capital to start it up, headquartered in Nigeria, coming later in the year?
$5 billion bank. It's a big number, but when it comes to big African oil and gas projects, be it field development or spotting a deep water well, or even taking it into field development and producing, $5 billion is nothing. So, but it's a great start. What do you need to do? We need to deal with our above ground risk issues so that we can unleash potential private capital that is in Africa. So think about this. You have $2.5 trillion in private capital in Africa. We're not unleashing that. That is a problem. So the key issue here is that our above ground risk issues are stifling capital even within Africa from going in to drive it. Our pension funds are somewhere around $500 billion. We are not using those pension funds to really fund Africa energy infrastructure, so that when you fund Africa energy infrastructure, you know what happens? We reduce the cost of producing per barrel, so it makes it cheaper and easier to do business, because our infrastructure deficit is taken care of already, and that really drives us. We also have to start to streamline the process with new funds that goes into shooting seismic, so we start having multi-client data available to Africans that want to do work onshore or shallow water, and you really go around and drive a gas game across the continent. So you need to have multiple funds. The Energy Bank is welcome, but we are embarking on saying that we need to have more funds, because when you have one big energy bank, then it becomes like the African Development Bank, and then you have the bureaucracy. But when there is more competition in the market, then we really start seeing how free market capitalism works, and we push to have limited government, and then individual liberty and property rights come into the game. That's how you drive energy for Africans every day, and you fund the downstream and midstream as well.
So the latest OPEC report says that the global oil demand will be about 123 million barrels between now and 2050. That's about 25 years down the line. And of course, investments in the oil and gas sector will be around $18.2 trillion US. Do you think these figures validate your position at the African Energy Chamber that there is still a whole lot more firepower within the hydrocarbon, within the fossil fuel industry, and that whatever conversation we're having is very important, renewable, clean energy, but oil isn't going anywhere anytime soon?
Oil is not going anywhere. Like Mark Twain would say, the report of my death was grossly exaggerated, and that's exactly what you find with the oil industry. Don't you forget, most of the data you get out of the IEA or mainstream Western organizations, they're talking about the 1 billion people in the global north that are very well You look at right now, you have 7 billion people that we're not counting for. Of course, oil demand is going to reduce in OECD countries, which are moving into renewable source. They are deindustrializing themselves. They're killing their economy. They're talking hydrogen and wind energy and all of this stuff. They're going for death. They're going for broke. But then you got this 7 to 8 billion in the global south and emerging countries that they're going to need more oil, more gas, more coal, more LPG to really drive up industrialization, power their economies. These are emerging markets that want the same beautiful things like those in the global north. They are going, demand is going to surge and it's going to increase. That's why you're going to see oil demand keep going up. 120 million barrels will be consumed per day. 18 trillion is going to be needed to invest by 2050. The real question we have to ask ourselves is, what role would African players play in this? How are we preparing ourselves to ensure that we are not just left behind, but we getting those new fields, especially onshore Africa that has been lashing. The IOCs are going deep water offshore, but we got to get African players doing onshore Africa, closing the infrastructure gap with pipelines and really driving that. We also need to put the hell of a pressure on governments to really get their act together, because sometimes a free market is important, but an enabling environment is even more important when it comes to African exploration. The time it takes for licensing, it takes too damn long to get licensing. Bureaucrats, be it Nigeria, be it Tanzania, be it Mozambique, bureaucrats sometimes hold projects back and they don't move forward. And how do we empower African companies? We have too many African independents seeking out projects. A European independent is more likely to get a project than an African independent. That's wrong. We need to empower African independents. We need to be a voice for them. We need to speak for them in the room when they're not in the room, and give these guys a fighting chance to go out there and change our continent and employ more Africans, promote more Africans, build capacity, and produce the energy that we need in this continent. That's what we need to be driving, because at the end of the day, it's Africans that are going to have to carry on this the Petrolons of the world and the Owandos of the world and the Sepplats. They are going to carry on these projects like what Kola Karim and Heritage and they are doing with Shoreline and Sahara Energies. They are going to drive Africa's energy independence forward. So we need to start empowering African companies to do the magic.
I'm sure when we're talking about licensing rounds in Africa, one country that is hardly talked about is Libya. And Libya is just going for a major oil licensing round. Give me a little bit of your thoughts at the African Energy Chamber, how much progress Libya is making north of the continent, with Morocco sitting next door, not so far on this side. Then you have the Senegal and Mauritania project at the other side as well, within that northern corridor.
You know, if you look at the Suez Basin and look at other basins across Libya, Libya has turned its things around. First time in 18 years, they had more than 28 companies bid for new blocks. BP just signed an agreement with them to drive up more. You remember BP, they used to talk only about green energy and all of that stuff. They had a guy who was CEO, he wouldn't even wear a suit. Now they changed their mind. They're moving right in with oil. I love the UBP. I was in their office yesterday in London. Really great team, and they're going to do really well. They're right in there in Libya. Also, the focus is ENI, Total Energies. They're starting back. OMV out of Austria, right back in Libya. Repsol in Spain, back in Libya. What is missing? African companies, African independence. But Libya has so much to offer. They have what the minister of Libya would call this highway theory, where you have marginal fields, you have orphan wells like what you see in Canada, and you have deep water and you have shallow water. So they're going to move well. Security, yes, it's a problem, but they're sorting that out, and you're going to see more expansion. I was in Libya earlier this year. What has happened since I left Libya until now, it has been outstanding. They get an amazing minister in Libya. Amazing minister. This guy is like he's like a John Wayne kind of guy. He just gets his stuff done. He's always there, just championing his country, pushing to get more and more investment into Libya. God bless him, and they're doing something really well in that country, and we all should be rooting for Libya. I'm praying that Libya gets it right. Look at Senegal. You know, Senegal has its twists and turns with the oil majors, but they're getting it now together. You know, first oil with Sangoma, coming on. They're going to look at doing more exploration, working together with geo partners. Mauritania has been going with the whole energy mix where you're seeing them look at that hydrogen stuff and solar and wind, but they are very focused in driving gas, and they're looking for more investments around the BLR project in Kenya. So I'm excited with what I see in that region, and they're still entertaining the idea of having a pipeline going up to Europe, but they're also looking at investing in their country. So don't bet against these countries. They are resolved to getting a lot of stuff done, and I think African investors should be playing in those markets and not just getting comfortable in the markets where we think that is our home.
Is that your key message? We're about 2 months away to the African Energy Week in Cape Town early in September. So, thereabout 2 months, thereabout. Give me an update on the hosting preparations, especially the knowledge side of the event. Of course, there'll be exhibitions and what have you. The knowledge side of the event, the projects in the deal room. What's the preparation looking like 60, 70 days to that event?
I'm telling you, get ready. Get ready for something big that's going to happen. Many people thought when those vagabonds left Cape Town to Dubai, an African would not be able to do it. We've exceeded expectation. You can, and right now we are getting more stable. We focus on getting real deals. Let me tell you this. Just watch this. You're going to see movement going on the Tanzania LNG with Shell and Equinor. We got some special news for that. Had long discussion with the Deputy Prime Minister from Tanzania. There's some magic that's going to come out of there. Mozambique, ExxonMobil moving that LNG project. It's moving forward. Total Energy, they're going to come out of force majeure. They're going to get that $20 billion project going in. Azul and the big discovery right now in Angola, you're going to see a lot of procurement, a lot of development discussions going around that. Don't stop there. Just watch what you're going to see with Total Energies moving around Congo and a new base in independents like Trident Energy, Perenco, Owando, Seplat. They are going to play a big role. For the first time, President of Algeria working together with new entrants in that market. They are going to be pitching their tent at Energy Week to drive up new stuff. My brother, the Minister of Egypt, and the big Egyptian delegation. But you know what's even better? We're getting more attention from banks that have traditionally not been part of us. They are showing up. Of course, we got people around Just Stop Oil or Greenpeace. We welcome them. They love us. I think, Johnson, when I get Greenpeace and all of these guys showing up at Energy Week, I know that there's love in the air, so we're going to welcome them too, to make their voices heard. But I think what we've been able to do is that we've been able to build an African narrative. We've been able to build a story around why we need oil, and we've been able to say, you know what, we've been unapologetic on our resolve to drive a message that says drill, baby, drill, and producing oil for Africa and for international markets, and we've been unapologetic. And I think when you do that, people resonate with that. So when you had people oppose us with Africa Oil Week, they just knew that stuff was fake. And Africans do have 5 fingers, and when you piss them off and trying to oppose an African energy movement like us, the Africans will use the middle finger on you. And I think that's what the Africans did with Africa Oil Week. The Africans showed them a middle finger for what they did to this country. That's why Africa Energy Week is strong and alive, and Africa Oil Week is dead in Ghana.
Angie Ayuk, the Executive Secretary at the African Energy Chamber in Johannesburg. Thank you very much. Really appreciate chatting with you, as always, for your insight on the global energy marketplace. Do have a wonderful evening in Johannesburg.